Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaye Stadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. Now, Sri Raghunatha Das Goswami's Manah Shiksha. As with the foregoing texts, the Shikshastaka and Upadeshamrita, the instruction derived from Manah Shiksha is neither theology, metaphysics, or the analysis of categories, but pertains to esoteric practices of mystic contemplation, the appropriate disposition and right conduct, etc. In text 1, he addresses his own mind, clasping his feet as inner brother, in conciliatory terms, not as a strict disciplinarian, but with blandishment to coax and cajole and conjure it to bring it round to willing and ready compliance. An objector may ask, how does the mind have feet? To which it might be said, well, if one is going to address the mind personally, why not ascribe feet to draw out the metaphor? He proceeds to enumerate 8 articles which he would have the mind cultivate, an apurva, unprecedented love, which is to say, an extraordinary love for the ensuing 8 articles, which are as follows. 1. The Guru. 2. The cowherd settlement. 3. The cowherds. 4. Pious people. 5. The earth gods, viz. Brahmins. 6. Initiation mantra. 7. The holy name. And 8. The shelter of Radha and Krishna. So, text 1. Gurau goshthe gosthalishu sujane bhusuragani swamantre srinamni braja navayuva dvandva sharani sadadambham hitva kururatimapurvamatitaram aye swantar bratas chatubirabijate dritapadaha. O mind, I hold your feet and supplicate to give up arrogance of high estate, extraordinary love to cultivate, for teacher and the holy pasture land, cowherds, pious, and the godlike Brahmin band, my secret mantra and the name divine, and refuge with the young couple benign. Footnote. As for cultivating friendship with one's own mind, Krishna says to Arjuna in the Gita, let each self, then, the self by self upraise, but let him not the self by self debase, for self alone is of the self the friend, the self also a foe who may contend. The self is the friend of the self for him who by the self has conquered been, but for the self that is unconquered, no, the self alone is of the self, the foe. Elsewhere, in another text, Sri Dasa Goswami expressed a similar conceit in his self-imposed vows, Swaniyama Dasaka, text 1. May my devoted affection adhere to preceptor, mantra, and the name dear, to Swarup and Rupa and all his train, to his elder may I fond love maintain. May I with love be ever worshipping Gandharva's fair lake and the mountain king, the pasture lands and Madhu's citadel, and votaries who in Gokula dwell. End of footnote. Text 2. A caution, prescription, and a confirmation. Na dharmam sruti gana niruktam kilakuru braje radha krishna prachura paricharyami hatanu sachi sunu nandishwara pati sutatve guruvaram mukunda preshtatve smara padamajashram nanumanaha. Do not to vice and virtue pay much heed, as have in ancient scripture been decreed. Nay, rather, serve within Vrindavan's grove Radha and Krishna ardently with love, and always hold that Sachi's darling son is Nanda's son, indeed, for they are one. Know my teacher to Mukunda is dear, O mind, do you always his feet revere? Footnote. The author admonishes his mind to avoid preoccupation with ethical questions of virtue and vice pertaining to scriptural prescriptions and prohibitions. Krishna concludes his discourse to Uddhava on the determination of virtue and vice in words like these. Why say too much on virtue and on vice? Let what has been said up to this suffice. To transcend the distinction twixt the two is verily the sign of real virtue. In respect to honouring the Guru, we find in the Svetasvatara Upanishad 6.23, this wisdom is manifest and bestowed on him who loves his Guru as his God. End of footnote. Text 3. In the previous verse, Raghunatha, addressing his mind, urged it to reject blind adherence to rules of virtue and vice. Anticipating the question, by what rule then must one direct one's conduct? The author adduces some basic principles for guidance. The practice of devotional disciplines proceeds along two distinct paths. One is impelled and inspired by scriptural ratiocination with a keen regard for rules and regulations. The other is driven by an eager curiosity to imbibe the spontaneous feeling of love that obtains between Krishna and his associates. Krishna being the object, which is Vishaya, the associates the subject, Ashraya, or repositories of spontaneous love. Ostensibly, there is no distinction between this or that path, since this one is characterized by interior contemplation on Krishna's names, beauty, attributes, and exploits. Sri Rupa sums up, saying, the hearing, recital, and all the forms of Vaidhi practices with this conforms. Thus the wise and learned on this declare, in both aspects these practices are there. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 12296. Text 3. Yadicherāvāsam vrajabhuvi sarāgam prattijanur yuvadvandvam tatchet paricharitam ārād abhilase swarupam shrirupam saganamiha tasyagrajamapi sputam premna nityam smara nama tadatam shrinumana. Should you with love in Vraja wish to dwell, from birth to birth, O mind, hear what I tell. And if you long the loving pair to serve, these are the ways and means you must observe. Fondly recall and bow in reverence due to Swarup, Rupa, and his elder too, and all the blessed society that stay in Braja worshipping throughout the day. Text 4. Now, Raghunath proceeds to enumerate some of the impediments on the path of spontaneous love which cause the mind to be diverted from its course. Asadvarta veshya visrija mati sarvaswaharani katha mukti vyagrya nashrinu kila sarvatmagilanihi api chaktva lakshmipati ratimito vyomanayani braje radha krishnau swarati manirau tvam bhajamanaha. Forsake the harlot, vain talk, who by stealth deprives you of your intellectual wealth. Of soul's emancipation hear no more, which, tigress-like, your being will devour. And even forsake love for Lakshmi's Lord, who draws you to his heaven for reward. Nay, rather, O my mind, I do implore that only Radha Krishna you adore, for they confer on those who worship them of their own love supreme, the rarest gem. Footnote: idle and frivolous talk is likened to a courtesan who dissipates her client's wealth, implying the wealth of discrimination here. Discourses on the theme of liberation, which indicates absorption of one's being into the undifferentiated ineffable Brahman, is compared to a ferocious hungry tigress ready to devour the soul. Then, in the exuberance of exclusive love directed to the sweet rustic forms of Radha and Krishna in Braja, advises caution in regard to becoming attracted to Krishna in his grand majestic form as Narayana, the spouse of goddess Lakshmi, who draws and entices the aspirant to his transcendent realm above the sky, which prejudices the attainment of the fond and simple love of Krishna, son of the cowherd Nanda. He concludes the last line by exhorting his mind to cultivate exclusive worship of Radha and Krishna, who, in the cowherd settlement of Braja, bestow the rare gem of spontaneous love. In the sage Satyavrata, in his Damodar Astaka, extracted from the Padma Purana, sings, O Lord of boons, I do not seek from thee salvation even in the best degree, nor do I any boon from thee require. This, O my Lord, is my only desire, that this thy form as the young cowherd boy may in my mind remain. What other joy could equal this great blessing or exceed? I have, indeed, for other boons no need. This lotus face of thine, of beauty rare, is framed by curly locks of sable hair, with crimson patches that clearly confess where thou art kissed by the fond cowherdess, whose roseate lips as bimber berries soft, she kisses thee both many times and oft. Let this vision within my mind remain, enough, O Lord, of any other gain. Damodarastaka 4 and 5. Text 5. Now Raghunath encourages followers to take as saviors, here Raghunath encourages to take as saviors the associates of Krishna and appeal to them for succor and aid. Asatchesta kasta prada vikatapasali biriha prakamam kamadi prakatapatapati vyatikarehi gale badhva hanyeham iti bakabit vartma pagane kuru tvam futkaran avati sayatha twang mana itaha. The wayside thieves, desire and his train, the noose of vain endeavours causing pain, have flung about my neck, and so I die. O mind, to save us, you must loudly cry for succour to the guardians of the way, the votaries of Baka's enemy, and they will surely rescue you from grief and enlarge you, affording swift relief. In honour of the votaries of Vishnu, a well-known verse salutes and praises their virtues. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. All hail to Vishnu's votaries, the incarnated wish-fulfilling trees, and oceans vast of extreme compassion, who to the base grant purification. Elsewhere, Raghunath, in a similar strain, opens his Vrajavilasa stava with these words. Caught I am and bound by tight and sturdy ropes of honour and distinction's ardent hopes, and held in durance by the highwaymen called desire for pleasure and for gain. May the patrol guards of the enemy of Agha loose my bonds and set me free. Text 6. Having entreated, exhorted, and persuaded, and thereby having mollified his mind, the author now takes on a more peremptory tone and expresses his abhorrence and disgust, and abominates the vices of hypocrisy and double-dealing. rebuking and upbraiding his laxity, he draws a striking contrast between the immaculate perception of Radha and Krishna's eternal love sports and the baseness of vain pride and duplicity. Are chetah prodyat kapata kutinati bharakara ksharan mutre snatva dahasi katamatmanamapi mam Sadatvam Gandharva Giridhara Pada Prema Vilasat Sudambodhe Snatva Swamapi Nitaram Mamcha Sukaya. O foolish mind, wherefore do you allow dissembling and hypocrisy to grow, which scorches and deprives us both of bliss, like bathing in a stream of donkey's piss? Nay, rather take a dip in the bright sea, ambrosial love for Gandharva and he who lifted up a mountain on his hand. This is, O mind, what you should understand. Do this, and then the sure result will be the highest joy to you and bliss to me. Text 7. The desire for fame, honor, and distinction is represented as one of the final vices to be overcome due to its stubborn persistence. The means to overcome this vain pride is prescribed as sincere and deferential service and attendance on the great generals who are the recipients, repositories, and agents of divine grace, whose propitiation secures the attenuation of this vice. Pratishta sadrista swapacharamani me hridinatet katham sadhu prema sprishati suchiretan nanumana sadatvam sevasva prabudayita samantamadulam yathatang niskasya tvaritamiham veshayati saha. So long as you preeminence desire, for honours and distinction still aspire, which like a base-born shameless wench within your bosom dances, tainting it with sin. How can that pure love sanctify your heart, while she there plays, refusing to depart? O mind, with profound respect you should serve the favourites of the Lord without reserve, and they will banish her without delay. Then love within your heart can make its stay. Footnote. The gradual development and accomplishment of ecstatic love is treated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is represented as delivering a parable on the creeping vine of love. The ensuing passage is a rendering, which is to say, is a rendering in heroic couplets. So, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela, chapter 19, verses 151 to 164. Traversing this world over and again, some fortunate jiva soul may attain from preceptor and Krishna's grace divine the potent seed of love joy's creeping vine. Then, turning gardener, he doth proceed with pious care to sow that precious seed. The disciplines of hearing and to sing are represented by the watering. And as the creeper grows with fair increase, the universal covering doth pierce. Beyond the stream of Viraja it grows, and into the supreme atmosphere goes. As ever upward flourishing it strives, at Goloka Vrindavan it arrives. To Krishna's feet, the wishing tree sublime, the creeper takes hold and begins to climb. Reposing there, spreads its tendrils and shoots, whence are produced many flowers and fruits. The gardener will carefully essay to pour water of hearing every day. To offend a Vaishnava or to hate were like an elephant infuriate that devastates and tramples and uproots, whence the vine dries up, withered at the shoots. Therefore, The gardener, being afraid, will rear an enclosure and high stockade, and thus construct a fencing and redoubt to keep the elephant offences out. But if from the creeper's vigorous juice unwanted and wild offshoots should produce, these represent extraneous desire for pleasure and salvation to aspire, forbidden conduct, crooked deception, malice to beings, gain and distinction. These vices and the many more that show are seen as the unwanted shoots that grow. Without due care, when watering the roots, one may but feed the unwanted offshoots, which is to the main trunk a detriment, and stunted is deprived of nutriment. Therefore, from the beginning, and as soon as growths unwanted appear, he should prune. Then, unrestricted, the main trunk can grow, and ultimately to Vrindavan go. The vine of love is then with love fruit graced. Now ripe, they fall, the gardener can taste. The vine, and thus the gardener may achieve his feet, the wishing tree to which they cleave. And there, in service of the wishing tree, the gardener revels eternally, and tastes the fruit of love to vast excess, and relishes eternal happiness. Indeed, this very excellent pure fruit is the highest gain of all man's pursuit, before which all other high attainment are worthless straw and insignificant. Thus ends that passage from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Now verse 8. Raghunatha affirms that after all, in the endeavours to overcome obstacles and improve one's disposition, hitherto discussed, ultimately all success relies on the good grace of Krishna. Yatha dushtatvam me darayati satasyapi kripaya yatha mahyam premamritamapi dadat ujjalamasho yatha sri gandharva bhajana vidaye prerayati mam tatha goshti kakwa giridharamiha tvam bhajamanaha. Just as the worst of recreants am I, he by his grace my heart can rectify, e'en as he does his sweet mercy bestow, the ambrosia of his love to know. Just as in worship of Gandharva fair, he prompts me to engage with devout care. Thus, O mind, while in this cowherd land, to him who held a mountain on his hand, entreat in plaintive tones and broken voice, that you may worship thus, and so rejoice. Verse 9. Madishana tattve. Having thus admonished his mind, now with blandishment, now with threat, the author proceeds on a new theme. Madishana tattve vraja vipina chandram vrajavaneshwarim tang na tattve tad atula shakitve tulalitam vishakham shikshali vitarna gurutve priyasaro girindro tat preksha lalita rati dattve smaramanaha. O mind, consider what I now shall say, and heed the mystery that I convey. My queen, the mistress is of Braja's lord, and he by Braja's empress is adored. Lalita, their confidant without peer, and Vishakha, their preceptor most dear. Remember, too, that merely by the sight of that dear lake wherein they take delight, and Govardhan, of holy mounts the king, the ecstasy of love rapture can bring. Text 10. The author delineates, in the pride of conscious superiority, the superlative and supernal excellence of Radha in comparison with all other renowned goddesses. Rating Gauri Lile Apitapati Saundarya Kiranai Sachi Lakshmi Satyaha Paribhavati Saubhagya Balanai Vashikarais Chandravali Mukha Mukha Navina Vrajasati Kshipatyaraadyatam Haridaita Radhang Bhajamanaha. Hari's beloved Radhika adore. O mind, in contemplation I implore. Her charming beauty shines with dazzling rays, Rati, Gauri, Leela with envy blaze. The power of her fortune puts to shame Sachi, Lakshmi, Satya of worthy fame, and even Braja's cowherd damosels, among whom fair Chandravali excels, are cast aside by her superior grace, and all their pride of beauty doth efface. Text 11. In the final teaching of Manashiksha, the author supplies an enumeration of the devout disciplines and practices prescribed as an adherent of Sri Rupa, his guide and preceptor. Samam Sri Rupena smara vivasa radha giri brito braje sakshat seva labana vidaye tadganayujo tadidya dhyana shravana nati panchamritamidam Dhayan nitya govardhanam anudinam tvam bhajamanaha. O mind, in blessed Sri Rupa's company, imbibe 5 nectars of divinity, to worship Govardhan and sing his name, to bow and meditate and hear his fame. The drinking of these 5 nectars each day, while at Mount Govardhan you make your stay, is verily the direct means to gain service of him who lifted a mountain, and Radha, while engrossed in sweet amor, surrounded by companions in the bower. Text 12. The benefit. The divine author concludes by offering a customary benediction to the reciter of Manashiksha. Manashiksha daika dasaka varame tan maduraya gira gayatyuchaihi samadhigata sarvartha tatiyah Sayutah Sri Rupanuga iha bhavan gokulavani Chano Radha Krishna Tula Bhajana Ratnam sa labhate. Whoever these 11 stanzas sings, with a sweet voice which from a pure heart springs, that take the form of lessons to the mind, all their desires accomplished sure will find, and dwelling here in Gokul's shady wood, and emulating Rupa in his mood, and keeping society with the good, the rarest gem of worship will receive, and Radha Krishna's boundless love achieve. And thus ends Sri Raghunath Das Goswami's Sri Manashiksha, Teachings to the Mind. Hare Krishna.